This is Mid-Atlantic Women in Agriculture's Wednesday webinar, Managing Legal Risks. Our presenter today is Ashley Newhall, Legal Specialist with the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics. All archived presentations, along with all upcoming presentations, can be found at our website. And a special thank you to our sponsors. This session is pre-recorded, but Ashley has provided her email address if you have any questions. Thanks so much for listening.
That I will be discussing with you today, managing legal risks on your operation. And before I get to that, I'd like to show my little disclaimer here to let you know that this is general advice, not a consultation with a personal attorney. And here, this is the Agricultural Education Initiative website where we post blogs and fact sheets and a ton of other information that might be helpful in your agriculture operation, either legally related or upcoming events that you might want to attend or know about. You can also keep up with us on Twitter at it's at MDAglaw, and also like us on Facebook. We definitely keep everything up to date on there as well, let you know when new publications are coming out. Currently, under the Publications tab on the ALEI website, you'll find a directory of attorneys for the Ag Law section, and also overviews of Maryland's right to farm laws, Maryland ag leasing laws, and labor laws here in Maryland. And there's also more in development coming your way. And like I said, if you follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you'll know as soon as those do get posted and pop up. So how many of you actually want to talk with an attorney? Typically, nobody wants to have to talk to an attorney. However, usually every lawyer is going to tell you, if you had come to me in the first place, I could help guide you or helped you to avoid whatever legal problem you currently are facing right now. So in doing that, agriculture, like any other business, requires specialized skills such as an accounting and legal expertise. This presentation will walk through some strategies that an ag operation could consider adopting to limit your legal risk. And please remember, it is very important to remember that even though you're taking precautions to protect yourself, it's not 100% certain that you won't find yourself in something in the end. However, if you do take these precautions now, you'll be in a better position when you deal with them later. So just an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk to you about lawsuit prevention. If you find yourself in a lawsuit, how you can prepare for that beforehand. Follow the requirements of any permit, regulation, or statute and what those might be. That you might need to know an agricultural attorney and why. That you also need to consider liability insurance, a liability waiver checklist that I've been working on, and how possibly business organization structures can benefit you in protecting yourself legally as well. So first, lawsuit prevention. You want to be willing to work with your neighbors. Maybe your neighbors are not agriculture in nature, or even if they are, maybe they do something entirely different than you do on your operation. This is a great way to avoid litigation. You want to make sure that your neighbors know what you're doing and that they're not over there wondering what you're maybe what you're doing or spraying could be hazardous, or they're completely uneducated as far as agriculture goes. So they're always on the lookout as what could happen, because sometimes media does portray agriculture in a negative way, and usually it's when something's gone wrong. So if you keep that talk open with your neighbors, it's going to benefit you long term. So things to consider to make your neighbors aware of your operation. You might consider hosting a potluck or barbecue on your farm. Maybe allow them to walk around, but obviously make sure those areas are safe where they are, and that possibly you're actually guiding them so they're not wandering all over your operation. And then also consider setting up maybe a Facebook or a Twitter to help give updates on your farm, what's going on there, It's more or less if you're completely open, that people are going to be less likely to think that you're harming them or the environment. So that's important to remember. And also, if you're considering expanding your operation, you might consider meeting with your neighbors or holding some sort of meeting to let everyone know what your intentions are and why you're doing what you're doing, and everything you're doing is actually in line with zoning and other regulations. You want to let them know that you're doing everything the right way. So that'll also make them less likely to come after you in the long run as well. So if you do find yourself in a lawsuit, these are things that you can do before you end up in some sort of battle or to prepare yourself for when litigation does happen. So it's important to remember that you keep good records, and especially when the claim against you is a violation of statute, regulation, or permit. So a lot of this can, be environmental related. So the first thing an attorney is going to ask you for is a copy of your records. What are you doing? They're going to want to know how you're, dealing with your accounting and what kind of practices are going on your farm. So it's important that even if you don't think it's important at the time, it could be important down the line. So what should you include in your records? You can never be too detailed. The more detailed, the better. For example, you want to date and time when you maybe have applied fertilizer. So it was June 14th at 2:15 p.m. and maybe Joe did it on such and such tractor on such and such field. And you might also list the equipment. What equipment was used, because maybe down the line it's the tractor that was actually harmed, and there's some sort of product liability situation there. So I can't stress enough how important it is. Definitely be detailed. If you think you're being too detailed, I'm sure that you're right on par. And you might also, to consider, list the rationales for the activity. So an example of this is I applied Roundup because of weed issues. So that's also important to remember, because like I said before, maybe your neighbors aren't agriculture related in what they do. So knowing why you did what you did is very important. And also, don't be afraid to snap photos. This also offers support for your rationale. And let's see here. So like I mentioned earlier, don't be afraid to snap photos. For example, if bugs are destroying your crop, then take photos of the damage, and if possible, try to take photos of the bugs, if they're big enough to see, of course. So photos demonstrate the conditions you're dealing with and can help others understand why you take the course of action you took. Plus, most of us do carry phones these days, and they almost all have cameras on them, so it's much easier to do than a few years ago. One note on photos: make sure that the photos include a date stamp. This is, again, extremely important. Like I said before, when you're taking notes about what you're doing on your operation when you did it, same thing here. So you may need to, it may require you to take an extra step in your phone here to actually set the date and time on your camera, or finding a kid that can, because I'm finding more and more that kids know more about my phone than I do. And another thing too that's very important is to follow the requirements in any permit law or regulation. So I'm sure this one goes without saying already. States' right to farm laws require you that you be in compliance with all three in order to use the right to farm defense. So if you're not in compliance with one of these, one of the things stated in the right to farm law, then you won't be able to use it to bar any sort of lawsuit against you. Or if someone sues you for not being in compliance with a permit, then you can pull out the permit and say, I am. So it's very important to definitely follow the laws and regulations here. And let's see, so how many of you actually know an attorney? Well, many of you, I'm sure, probably do, or know someone that maybe has already used someone for a divorce, real estate deal, or maybe a criminal matter. But if you were a poultry farmer and a group claimed you were violating permits, what would that attorney be able to help you? So does the family lawyer, does this person have any specialized knowledge? Does he or she know the proper experts to actually call to support you in some sort of litigation or mediation even? Would you be paying this attorney to learn as they go, which can get more expensive? So, for example, if you're a row crop operation accused of killing a neighbor's tree due to pesticide drift, is the family lawyer or uh, real estate attorney going to know how to deal with this? I mean, it's extremely specialized. So how do you find an attorney that specializes in your legal issues? You might want to ask your neighbors that also farm or have some sort of farm operation. Pay attention to the newspapers. Maybe a similar case has made the news and there was an attorney listed or cited. Um, Contact your county and state bar associations. This is simpler than you might think. It's an something easy to look up, and like I had at the beginning of the slide, we do have a list on our website. You can also check out the American Ag Law Association's website. They maintain a list of members from around the country. They'll eventually contain areas of specialization, so agriculture attorneys, it's a broad range of specialization, so maybe you're dealing with something that's very specific, maybe some sort of permit or regulation, and not all agricultural attorneys might have specialized knowledge in this area. So eventually they'll contain an area of specialization for that. And you can also contact me. My contact information will be at the end. And when you do actually meet an attorney, you'll want to ask the attorney to conduct an audit of your operation. Let them look over the farm and see what they think potential liability risks are on your farm. Using an attorney should be viewed as a form of insurance. The little bit you pay early on for an audit of the business may save you huge amounts in litigation fees in the end. And I can't stress this enough. I know no one wants to actually speak to an attorney if they don't have a legal issue, and typically no one wants to even speak to them when they do. It's kind of like, oh no, I have to talk to a lawyer. But if you kind of wrap this into your future insurance plan, in theory, it would definitely help you in the end. I'll get more into this, but you'll want to take an afternoon and look over the areas that people could be walking on your farm. Are there places you need to fix or warn customers about? Is there an area where you see that maybe neighbor kids or neighbors in general are continually walking across your property, and do you need to post no trespassing signs there? Because I mean, there's a lot of things that go on your property that you may not know about unless you actually walk to the very depths and ends, and almost on a daily basis. Things overgrow, people drop things, all of a sudden it becomes a danger and you don't even know about it. So these signs can be very important as well. Do you need to hang a sign in general of possible warning, dangers, such as beware of dog or beware of cattle? So if you have people walking across your property and maybe you have a bull in with a set of cattle, that's something that maybe your neighbors should know about. There's also the liability insurance. You need to carry some form of comprehensive liability insurance on your operation. You should talk with your agent to make sure areas you are concerned about are included in that policy. This is something that I've kind of been working on now, is the liability waiver. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, but I do like to discuss some of the things that you should consider in forming a liability waiver. It's also very helpful, again, if you see an attorney up front that can help you do this as well, and they can actually write the form for you. So consider, do you have tours on your farm operation? Do people knock on your door and ask to see your cow, poultry, or vegetables? If your answer is yes, you may have liability concerned about these visitors. There's always a risk of injury no matter what activity you participate in on a farm. I mean, that's even if you're working it. So you can only imagine when people walk on your farm that don't work on the farm operation, what kind of liability you might expose yourself to. You may consider having these visitors sign a liability waiver before they enter. So in creating a liability waiver, even better, you should also ask an attorney to help you with this. But these are a few items that I think you should consider. What type of property use and or activities will the waiver cover? So you'll want to define all activities in detail. State specifically the use permitted under the waiver. So maybe the waiver only applies to those taking a tour. It doesn't mean that they're helping you plant any of your crops. So you want to make sure that whatever's permitted is stated on the waiver. You would also consider what the property use is outside the waiver would not include, like I just said. So maybe they're just there taking a tour. They're not there actually hands-on helping with anything. Under what terms may the person or group enter your property? So consider, do they require a scheduled appointment? Can they just show up unannounced? Do they need a guide or you with them at all times? This is extremely important because if you're not with them, that could expose you to other liability. So if you include in the waiver that this is with or without you, that could also bar you from some sort of liability as well. What are the names of groups of people participating in the activity? Is it a group of kids, teenagers, new farmers, things of that nature you'd want to include. You'd also, this is extremely important as well, include a description of the land the liability waiver actually covers. So this goes along with taking the slide I talked about earlier. Make sure to take a walk around your property, put up signs that you need to. In the liability waiver, you'll want to describe the boundaries and the size of the land, the areas that are off limits to visitors, and safety zones around buildings, barns, pastures, and houses. You would also, I think, want to choose a specified location of entry and exit. This would make it easier so when people come to visit or they decide that they're going to, you have some sort of program going on that they're going to enter in one area. That way you don't have people entering from all over different parts of your farm before they actually sign the liability waiver. So you'd also want to state the location of entry and exit on the waiver. You'd also want to describe any specifics that may be particularly harmful about your property. Are there wild animals around your property that, people may encounter? I mean, that could be as easy as a dog. They may not be considered wild animals, but you might want to note on there that, you have farm dogs that are around, or cats. A lot of people, again, if they don't grow up in agriculture, it might make them nervous. So the more specific you can be, the better. And then the obvious, sharp edges, poison ivy, anything that's like completely apparent, you'd also want to include. It could be apparent to the farmer or operator, but not necessarily to the visitors. You would also want, this is definitely in all waivers, you'd include language that means guests will not sue or attempt to make a claim against the owner regarding their land use and activities. A statement such as, the user agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the landowner, is a good example. This is typical language you'll see in almost any liability waiver. If the person or group is under 18 years of age, so again, if you have school-age children coming in for a tour of your operation, make sure to include a guardian signature line. You would consider noting that anyone under 18 years of age must be accompanied by an adult, and that the adult agrees to indemnify and hold harmless the landowner for injuries to the child. Again, it's the same type of language, but also very important when you have children under 18 years of age. If your venture deals with hunting on your property, it's wise to incorporate firearm guidelines and require that all hunters have completed a hunter safety course. So this could be as easy as stating, I have completed a hunter safety course, and having them check if that's the venture on your operation. This may also go without saying, but it's always wise to prohibit alcohol consumption on your land during any of your activities. I know that seems obvious, but again, in the legal world, it's better to state the obvious than to think everyone knows what's already included. And you would also want to include in the waiver that the form will be construed under the state of Maryland laws if your operation is in the state of Maryland. And then this goes along with liability insurance. You'd want to make sure to update your risk management plan. Talk with your insurance agent to make sure your insurance coverage covers activities that will take place on the farm. And also, secondly, this is another way to help manage your legal risk. Determine if you need to incorporate a business structure into the farm, such as an LLC or corporation, to help protect your farm. And this is important. On the next slide here, I'll talk more about considering using a business organization structure and protecting your farm and personal assets. So a few of the main structures that I'd like to go through are partnership, which is an association of 2 or more individuals to jointly carry on a business. Each shares in the profits and losses of the partnership equally, and each individual has the authority to bind other partners. So they're both, a partnership means everyone's a type of managing type partner. They're active. In a limited partnership, it's very similar to the partnership, but this allows for a separate class of partners who only provide capital and share in profits or losses, but they don't participate participate in management decisions or anything that has to do with management. Corporation is an entity formed under state law to act as a single person separate from the individuals owning the business and right to exist indefinitely. So a corporation, this will protect you, your personal assets. So if something was to happen, you are to get sued, this could potentially everything personal, your family, stuff outside of the business, that would protect you from that. Limited liability company, it's an entity also formed under the state law containing elements of a partnership and a corporation. And if you want to know more about that, Paul and I are actually doing overviews of each structure and discussing in more depth the benefits of each, so advantages and disadvantages that go along with each as well. So if you want to see more of that, we still have a few more posts coming up. You can follow this link. And to conclude, as I said earlier, there's no way to limit 100% of your legal risks. No matter what you do, you can't prepare for the unknown, but it's better to have your guard up and do everything in your power. So that's what I hope to have pointed out for you today. Obviously, you don't have to follow all of my recommendations, but this is just to get you started to think about the things that you can do in your operation that help to show you're following the law, so following any permits and regulations that you need to be abiding by, and also to give you ideas about how to protect your business and also your personal assets in the future if anything were to come up. It's all about being proactive.
Thank you for watching our archived presentation of our Wednesday webinar. If you would like to see more archived Wednesday webinars, please visit our YouTube channel. Or to find a schedule of upcoming live webinars, visit our website.